It's interesting that you mentioned Latin America. Netflix recently did a series called Narcos about Pablo Escobar, and it really opened my eyes to U.S. drug policy and how it's affected other countries, particularly Colombia. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the international aspects of the war on drugs.
When we look to Central and South America, we find countries, nations, governments, and societies are completely disrupted by our war on drugs. So that a lot of drugs are produced in South America and Central America, and we've cut off the sea routes and the air routes so that those drugs have to be brought up on land through Central America. And as a consequence, these drug cartels have established a transportation route that also involves buying off politicians, police, and militaries in those countries, or simply just threatening them. And so they have this conduit that they've established to transport drugs. And so we've seen really a breakdown of society in Central American countries like Nicaragua, Guatemala, Honduras, Belize, all of these places. There are some places that are relatively free from this negative influence in the war on drugs, but a lot of the rural areas in particular, it's very violent. There's no law and order really. And, these drug cartels and kingpins like Escobar have really made life untenable. And that's why you see so many people from South America and Central America and Mexico fleeing into the United States. And they'd be perfectly happy to stay at home if there wasn't so much violence, if they were able to have a job where there was foreign investment. But foreign investors aren't going to go into those places because they're just too dangerous and the government doesn't provide law and order at all. And so there's no jobs. Existence is very difficult and you're constantly under the threat of violence. And so, these people by and large are not benefiting. They're not getting revenues from the drug dealers and the drug cartels. There are a few people who serve as soldiers for these drug cartels and they make money. They have a good existence, but for your average person, it's awful. And so last year you saw young kids even making a dangerous up to 1,500-mile journey on foot to try to get into the United States and find themselves a friend or a relative that had made it into the United States. It's just unbelievable what we've done to those poor people.
So if drugs were legal in the United States, the idea is that Walmart might start importing safer versions of these and undercut the cartels. Is that sort of the idea?
Ultimately, that's where we want to go. So far, we've seen with Colorado legalizing marijuana that the marijuana growers near the Mexican border that would otherwise be transporting marijuana into the United States, they've found that it's no longer profitable to grow marijuana. So they've gone back to regular farming. But ultimately, legalization would eliminate the cartels, would eliminate the drug kingpins, and production would become commercial. And it would be large scale, like, for example, marijuana and cocaine would be large scale commercial operations, mostly near the equator. And that stuff would be, made under commercial conditions. And it would be sold in forms that weren't threatening to do harm to people. And as a consequence, most cocaine, for example, that was sold legally before the Harrison Narcotics Act was sold in highly diluted forms in various tonics. Well, Coca-Cola was one of the big commercial outfits, and they had cocaine in Coca-Cola, but it would never kill you. You would have to drink way too much of it to even get a cocaine high off of it. And the sugar in Coca-Cola would kill you quicker than the cocaine would. And so, Walmart and other retailers would have to be very cognizant about negligence laws and, doing harm to their customers, making sure that children didn't have access to those products or, highly dangerous versions of those products. And so you'd get a great return to normalcy with legalization, and commercial production has many, many benefits over black market production. And you're also cleaning up the mess we've made in Central America somewhat. In South America, somewhat. Afghanistan, Lebanon, all these places that have a comparative advantage in producing these illegal drugs, they would all see a lot of benefits there. We would see a lot of benefits here. We wouldn't be arresting and imprisoning hundreds of thousands of people for nonviolent crimes in the war on drugs. There'd be a reduction in property crime. There'd be a reduction in the collateral damage where people are killed, particularly in the inner city. And so the benefits of legalization just fan out in all directions.